Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That Cruise Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the non glamorous side of cruising, which is how to pay for it. No one ever wants to talk about how to finance it or how to pay for it. If people see a price tag, they run away. I'm going to introduce our co hosts today, and then after that, we'll get to the news topics, and then we'll get to the part where you can afford a cruise, and we'll tell you how. And we'll tell you how to tip and everything else. So I'm going to first introduce James with cruisewestcoast.com and Man Tripping.
Hey guys, it's James from Cruise West Coast and Man Tripping as my wonderful wife and co-host and cruise travel advisor extraordinaire has introduced me as. I don't really have a lot of news, but I did find some interesting statistics that I think confirm what we've been saying based out of our knowledge. That is, clearly from a search volume, cruise terms have fallen off a cliff since March. I mean, literally words that were being searched for 1,000 times a month are being searched for less than 100 times a month now. However, what's interesting is we're finding some life, especially in new destinations and new trends, especially in river cruising in Europe, that are recovering. Like for instance, I looked at River Cruises UK, and that was actually up significantly to the point where I think I said a few minutes ago, it was actually over what it was last year this time. So I think that's an interesting thing because I frankly have never thought of River Cruises UK, but my guess is a lot of cruise fans in the UK that aren't ready to go to Germany or aren't ready to go to a Douro River Cruise in Portugal, for instance, that are looking forward to doing something at home. So I looked and said, what about the U.S. river cruising market, which is really nascent to say the least, but certainly on an upswing last year. And what I found is that things like River Cruise Nashville are still way lower than it was last year. However, it is up considerably versus what it was just a couple months ago. And I think that's good evidence or good news for all of us because that's in parallel with a lot of things about when will cruises start again? That's way up. Our cruise is safe. That was way up, obviously, and that's I'd prefer people to be searching for how to afford river cruise or how to afford Mexican cruise than our cruise is safe. But those are buying keywords, folks, and I think it's really important to think now about planning your future cruise because now is a great time to really focus on what you're going to do in 3 months or 6 months, as opposed to sitting back and saying, "Well, I can't cruise now, so the world's going to end." But enough of my nerdy, geeky number knowledge. Before I pass it back to Ashley, who has some real news, I wanted to also remind you guys this is a live and interactive show, so if you'd like to comment and ask a question, please do so that we can answer it on the air. So with that being said, Ashley, what's going on in the world of cruising?
So there's significantly more good news this week than there has been in some previous weeks. I'll start out with the not so good so that we can kind of, bury it with the good stuff. So we have seen a pretty active hurricane season so far. It's, I guess, not majorly necessarily affecting cruising because cruising isn't happening right now for the most part. We saw Hurricane Laura in the Gulf within the past week, and now there are 2 tropical storms brewing. There is Omar and Nana, which is an interesting name. I think Omar, it's sort of been predicted that it's not going to be too much of an issue, but Nana is unfortunately headed towards Central America. So there's a whole slew of watches and warnings for Belize, Mexico, Guatemala, Roatan, Honduras.
You got to watch out when Nana's pissed off.
Yeah. Well, this is awful, but well, not awful, but my grandmother passed away like 2 years ago and we called her Nana. And so we were just joking the other day that she's up there looking down on 2020 and she's pissed. She's like, I've had it. This whole year just stinks, and because 2020 hasn't been bad enough. We're just going to throw a storm in there too. Seabourn Venture, which is the first dedicated expedition ship for Seabourn Cruise Line, has been postponed until I think it's December of 2021, which is unfortunate. The line has already taken some steps to kind of add some expedition-y types of excursions to some of its other ships with the Ventures program. And this ship was supposed to be this really, super luxury ship that would focus solely on expedition cruising. And it's interesting because I know we talked about this a few weeks back, that expedition really was seeing an upturn before all of this happened. So that's a shame to hear. But 2 new ships that are coming out did have successful sea trials within the past week. Mississippi Cruises American Jazz and Silver Seas Silver Moon. So that's some good news. And just as a side note, I read earlier today that there are currently 113 new cruise ships on order to be delivered between now and 2027. So,
oh my God, that's a lot.
It is a lot, and I'm curious to see if they all roll out by 2027. Just given the market, I think based on some of those numbers James was throwing out just a few minutes ago, there is interest, and I think cruising will bounce back. So trying to keep it positive here, and then 2 kind of loosely cruise related stories that are a little bit on the fun side. It has a bit of a Hollywood tie-in here. I don't know if you guys heard, but Tom Cruise paid to rent out 2 Hurtigruten ships to house the cast and crew who are filming Mission Impossible 7. Now, I didn't even know there was like more than one Mission Impossible. So Mission Impossible 7, like that's a long franchise, but I guess they were filming and they had to stop back in February when all of this happened. So he's rented out 2 Hurtigruten ships to attempt to finish filming, I guess, to provide everybody a place to stay, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear about the ship, but I did hear that he like picked some little remote town as well where they could stay where nobody's at. There's like one inn to keep like, the germs away or something. But I didn't hear about the Hurtigruten, so that's pretty cool.
That must have been the solution to the issue.
So would that be a Tom Cruise cruise?
Yes, it would be. And you know what's hilarious? Speaking of keywords, often when and I'm sure other people in the industry who are searching for keywords are having the same issue, but you'll get a lot of results for Tom Cruise related things when you're searching for general cruise terms. So a lot of times you have to put those like, family cruise minus Tom, minus Surrey, minus, all the terms you don't want to show up. And then the other fun sort of Hollywood cruise tie-in, Ed Sheeran, the singer, and his wife just had a baby girl, and they named her Lyria Antarctica Seaborn Sheeran. And there's some speculation that it is tied to a cruise that they took approximately 9 months ago. They were on Ponance Les Lyrial, so people are speculating that that's where the name Lyria came from, and they cruised to Antarctica. So they're guessing that that's where her middle name came from. There is a Seaborn thrown in there, but apparently that is her mother's last name. So that's not a tie-in with the Seaborn cruise line or anything like that. But he hasn't officially commented on where the name came from, but people are assuming that maybe their daughter was conceived on Les Lyrial while they were in Antarctica.
Hey, if this ship's a rockin'.
Do not knock.
No, I wonder if that earns him. Ed Sheeran can freaking buy his own boat if he wanted to now, but I wonder if that earns him a free cruise on Ponant for life or something.
I don't know, but I suspect that, I don't know if I'd call him an avid cruiser, but he's been on cruises before. A few years back, I believe he had a suite on Cunard. I don't know which ship. I want to say maybe Queen Mary 2. I could be wrong. But anyway, he wrote part of one of his albums on the ship, and he went on the ship to sort of seclude himself in the suite and get some work done, which I thought was pretty cool. So he has cruised before.
Well, Ed, if you're watching, I know you're a huge fan of that cruise
sure
show, and Tom, for that matter, you too. Like, I think it'd be a great show if we could get Ed and Tom both on here, saying their first names as if I actually am friends with them. But you guys are always welcome to join us, and just DM me on Instagram, and we'll get you hooked up.
Well, those are great news. Now, I do have some news, but it's not really news because they've been out for a while. And I was searching around the internet looking for, I guess I just wanted to hear the ocean waves. Now, I live in San Diego, so you would think I can hear it anytime. But I wanted to hear it from a cruise ship. And it's different. It sounds different, I'm telling you. And I couldn't find the right ones because every time I typed in, I saw it once, but when I typed in like today, like cruise ship waves, it was giving me really bad waves on cruise ships that I do not want to promote. But I do want to, I don't know if you guys have seen any of these cruise ships resorts. There's two. There's one in Korea and there's one in Turkey that they designed the resort to look like a cruise ship. So I thought they were really cool, and I don't know why I've never seen them before. So I do want to show you one of these. Well, I'm going to show you both because I think they are pretty cool. The first one is going to be the Sun Cruise Resort and Yacht in Korea. And I don't know if you can see that photo or not, but I'm going to show you a better photo here in a second. Let's see what else I want to show because it just looks really very cool close up. Sorry, I only have one screen, so sharing this is a little bit more difficult. I think this might be the cool photo. No, this is their website. Okay, let's go to the next one quick. Sorry, guys. There we go. What do you think? You guys are all muted.
It looks like there was a flood and a ship got stuck up there and then the waters receded.
It kind of reminds me of Typhoon Lagoon.
It actually was built resembling Royal Caribbean's Radiance class. So I thought it was pretty cool. I think it looks, if you look it up, it's the Jean, I don't want to screw up the name. So Sun Cruise, look that up. The other one I wanted to show.
And apparently somebody's offering Alaska 14-day cruises from $15.99.
Hey.
Contact Heather at Flow Voyages. She's here.
And then the other one, have you seen, where is it at? Titanic Beach, Laura in Turkey. Now that one, I mean, yeah, it resembles a cruise ship, but not as much as the other one does.
It's close. It's close. It looks fun.
That one looks a little more posh. I thought it was kind of cool. So if you can't go on a cruise, I mean, you might be able to go to one of these resorts right now and pretend you're on a cruise.
Honestly, I would just take one of those cabanas for a week at this point.
That is very true. I would take anything right now.
Well, things have gotten to the point where, we talk about virtual cruising. I couldn't deal with not having my frozen drinks, so we actually bought a Blendtec blender the other week, and we've been whipping up some pina coladas. I haven't quite gotten to the Miami Vice, although I do have a lot more respect now for those awesome cruise ship bartenders who are whipping out Miami Vices and pina coladas just like bang, 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 because it takes a lot of effort to get the right proportions, and then to make the pina colada and the daiquiri and then combine them in the same cup is without spilling is way more effort than and more talent than I clearly have right now. But the nice thing about making drinks is that you can enjoy things even if it doesn't come out perfect.
Well, now we're going to move on to our main topic of the day: how to finance your cruise, budget, where the money needs, how you need to do everything so you can afford to go on the cruise and afford tip and afford to do excursions and to tip on those excursions. I mean, yes, they say it's all inclusive except for liquor and if you go to a specialty restaurant, but you still need a tip. And yes, you are tipping. They have, a tip got, or the tip money that you pay per day, whatever it comes to, $11, $12, but you really should be tipping more. But first, I'm going to talk about the financing part, the fun travel agent stuff. There are so many places that will finance a vacation in general. Any kind of crappy lender out there wants to try to steal money from people, and with finance costs, could be like 32 APR percent. And then you've got some good ones. I mean, there are some other ones I'm not going to mention right now that have come out. I'll mention Uplift, but I don't specifically work with Uplift. They work with certain travel agencies. They're trying to get more. But still, with Uplift, if you miss a payment, you're going to have to be caught. You're going to get a charge of $20. And, there's certain still fines that you'll have to pay over time. So I wanted to talk about that because I've never really even thought about going and having a credit company kind of finance my cruise, but it can be done. Do I recommend it? No. So if you do look up something like that, I do not recommend it, because honestly, if you want to a cruise, the cruise lines make it so easy. For example, I have someone that booked an Alaskan cruise 7 months ago for 2021 September. Okay, well, they just had to pay the deposit, which there was a deal going on, and there was 3 of them, but the kid was free, so it ended up being $100. So they can pay gradually, and then when 90 days comes, well, it used to be 120. You got to pay in full at 120 days on Norwegian, and now they've moved it to 90 days. So you can pay every month at your own speed to pay off this cruise. So there's no reason why you cannot do this. You can pay on your own. That's what I recommend, but I will also say Norwegian, I'm going to share another screen for you guys. Not just Norwegian, but Princess does it too. They have their new Easy Pay allows Holland America Line guests to pay monthly interest-free cruise payments. So basically, it's kind of like I'm talking about, but instead you have your agent hook you up with that and set you up at a certain amount. Let's say you say, okay, I'm going to have the $200 a month to put towards that. Okay, so it'll automatically deduct it out instead of you physically having to talk to your agent and say, okay, I want to put this amount in now. And there's no charges on that, so it makes it super nice. Ashley, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think is that all or most Carnival Corp brands that offer that? I know Carnival offers Easy Pay as well.
And that's what I don't understand, because Carnival's actually on the whole Uplift system too, which, I mean, if you're offering this free, why would you go to Uplift as well? Do you see what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, so, it might just be to offer options just so people can pick.
I guess, because honestly, I think that's the better, what they're offering. The Easy Pay is a much better option since there's no fees and no anything like that. So you can afford a cruise. Yes, James?
Does that include all your excursions and especially restaurants too? I mean, are you able to lump that into a whole package, or?
You can add those. And so let's say you've already paid 6 months of your cruise, and then you add excursions into that. It will automatically, unless you pay it outright, it will automatically calculate all that in, and your charges will change per month.
Oh, very cool. That'd be really helpful, because I know, especially on the cheap cruises, and I say cheap by really anything under $700 per person. The excursions, especially restaurants, can end up being at least the same price as you're actually paying for the trip itself. So being able to say like, okay, I've got $1,000, balance to pay off, and Easy Pay can just break it up, makes it a lot nicer than having to worry about like, your charge at the end of the cruise going, oh crap, I've got, I've got
All
$1,000 I
those
got to figure out.
BBCs, James.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there are also ways to earn, maybe, sorry, Heather, I don't know if you were
No,
probably going
go
to mention
ahead.
this, but if you have a credit card that gives you points, you can earn points toward booking. Some of the credit cards will let you directly book travel using the points, or like I know I have one that I can opt to get cash back. They'll actually send me a check, and then you can put that toward the purchase of a cruise or the flight to get to the cruise or whatever that might be. And cruise lines also have branded credit cards. So if you're an avid celebrity cruiser, or I don't know, Royal Caribbean cruiser, whatever, you can apply for the cruise line's credit card and earn points that way. And sometimes I think you get extra
Gives
perks
you a lot
too.
of perks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather, I'll let you talk about those. If
Yeah.
I don't know
there
much
can,
about the details.
honestly, I don't know a lot more. I can't even talk. I don't know. Every cruise line has something different. Whether if you get this amount discount, or maybe a free down payment, or special gifts in your room, or maybe a free excursion. There's endless options. What the cruise line does that's great is they just want you to cruise. That's just simple. They will figure out any way for you to cruise, any possible way. So if you see a cruise out there that's for you and your spouse, that's $3,000, and you're like, man, I don't have $3,000 in my pocket right now. I could do a down payment of 500. Well, let's do it. You can do it. You can go on that cruise you've dreamed of. You do not have to say, oh, down the line, because down the line you may not have the money either. You just need to figure out what you can pay each month and do it. And if you are able to get one of those credit cards, because I will say those credit cards do, you have to have a certain credit score to have, which not a lot of people, it's hard to get a very good credit score like Ashley has. I used to have a great credit score, but sometimes it's hard to get those. So you just got to figure out what you can do, and that's the main thing, is figuring out what you can do. But along with this budgeting, you need to sit down and figure out, yes, my cruise is going to cost this much. How much is it going to cost for me to either drive down and stay in a hotel the night before, or fly and stay in the night before? Because as Ashley and I have talked, you definitely have to get to wherever you're going the night before, so you do not risk any weather changing your flights. Right, Ashley?
Yeah. Yes, unless you are close enough and fortunate enough to live near a drive-to port where you can just hop in your car and go the day of.
Yes.
And even in that case, you can cut costs by taking an Uber if it's if you're able, if you're close enough,
Yeah.
or getting a friend to drive you, or even just looking at parking lots that might be a little bit away from the port, where you can maybe get an Uber from there if the parking is cheaper than at the port. Because if you drive to the port, you're going to have to park your car, and they do charge you for it because they charge you for everything.
I will say James and I have always done, not always, but when we've gone to Orlando, we've flown into the Sanford airport, and from there we've rented a budget rental car and have taken budget to Cape Canaveral and stayed a night in a hotel there. And then the next morning, we'll go to drop the car off, and they're not very far from the port. So we drop the car off, we get there right when it opens, and then we get on their first shuttle, which is free, to the cruise port. And it actually is so much cheaper for us to rent that car for one night to get there than to do a limo or, the airport vans or anything else. So
yes,
that's also another way to think.
When you say shuttle, do you mean the car rental shuttle or a hotel shuttle? Because a lot of the hotels will have shuttles as well.
Yes. We'll do the car rental shuttle. But you're right. A lot of the hotels will allow you, if you drive down and park or stay at their resort or hotel for the night, you can get their shuttle for free to the port the next day, or they will offer a pay for shuttle that will take you over, and they'll give you a time to meet outside.
Yeah, and I think uh, Port Canaveral is probably better than many other ports
Oh,
for that
yeah.
because there's so many people that are flying either into Sanford for Allegiant or into MCO for in Orlando and just going back and forth. So it's not even a big deal for them to have, 100 cars or 500 cars land in Port Canaveral because they know that later that afternoon the people are going to be picking up the cars and going back to Orlando again. Whereas I think
Yeah.
that your mileage may vary, no pun intended, in ports like Miami, where people are taking a taxi to downtown. But it's certainly looking for hotels with a cruise shuttle, especially a free cruise shuttle, is something that you should absolutely look at because even the ones, for instance, in Miami that are maybe not necessarily downtown, but away from downtown that have a parking lot, you're going to be able to maybe have a parking fee of $50 for the week with if you stay there versus paying $50 or $20 per day at the cruise port itself.
Yeah. And I would advocate that if you can drive to a port. If you're really on a tight budget and you're trying to cut costs, the biggest cost you can cut right off the bat is that flight. So for me, I'm an hour from New York. I'm a few hours from Baltimore. Boston's a bit more of a haul, but I could get there if I wanted to. I know you guys are on the West Coast, so you have several options as well, especially right there in San Diego. And I know people sort of in the middle of the country have a little more of an issue with this, but that's a great tip about Allegiant and flying into Sanford. I've done that many times. It's a great little airport. Look for the smaller airports and the regional airports. They're often serviced by smaller, more affordable airlines. And if you can, pack a carry-on so you're not paying that extra baggage fee. That'll save you some money too if you have to fly. But I always advocate drive to when I can.
Or if you have one of those credit cards that has free checked bags.
You know what? Back to the sort of the credit card aspect of budgeting. Um, if you don't want to charge it, if you don't want to buy a cruise on credit, and you're worried about something like Easy Pay where they automatically debit your account every month or however you have it set up, another good tip is that most cruise lines offer gift cards. So what you could do is every month, like if you're not good at saving, if you say to yourself, yeah, realistically, I don't think I'm going to be able to set aside $50 or $100 in my bank account every month to buy a cruise. I'm going to end up spending it. What you can do is you can go buy a gift card for whichever cruise line you want to sail with for $50 here, $100 here, and stockpile them. And then when you get enough, it sort of forces you to save because you can't spend that on anything else. And then when you've accumulated enough of these gift cards, you can say, hey, I'm going to go book my cruise now.
No, exactly. You're right. I actually, and especially places, grocery stores like Kroger's sometimes will have, whether it's Ralph's, Kroger's, whatever it is by you, you can get $10 discount on $100. So you're really only paying 90. And then you could get, as my dad would tell you, because he's all into his bonus gas points. If you buy a card, you could get 4 times gas points. So then you're saving yourself money with the gas points as well. So those are deals to look for.
But just as a word of caution, though, I would strongly recommend that if you do that, actually, to be honest, I would strongly recommend against doing that. As somebody who oftentimes gets paid from campaigns in Visa gift cards, I literally have Visa gift cards lying around the house. And sometimes, if you're not super diligent about making sure you spend them on time and making sure that you keep them in exactly the right space, sometimes they can be very easily lost. Whereas if you simply say, I'm going to take $50 out or $100 out every month and put it into a savings account, which most banks will allow you to do a savings account for essentially free. That way it's all in one spot instead of having potentially 20, 30, $100 gift cards lying around the house because those can get lost, and that would be really terrible.
But some people are more, no offense, James, more responsible with where they put things and know where they put things. See Ashley laughing at me right
I,
now.
I love being
I
married.
mean,
It,
That's why I'm single, guys.
it is a great option for those who are organized. But if you are somebody that loses stuff, yeah, maybe that isn't your option. But like I said, you can get deals on those for $10 off 100 and the gas points. So it could work out for you.
Yeah. Going back to what Heather was talking about before with knowing your costs up front, I think that's the crux of the show today, right? Is that if you're going to budget, you need to know what you're budgeting for. And I think this is particularly true if you're a first time cruiser. You may not know what's even on board that's going to cost you extra. So I think the important thing is to kind of get to know your cruise line a little bit. Whichever cruise you book, sit down and take a look at the offerings on the specific ship that you're going to be on. And don't assume that just because you hear about all these cool bells and whistles that they're going to be included in the price. The last thing you want is to get your heart set on this really cool feature that the ship has, and you're on a really tight budget and you get on board and you find out, oh, sorry, there's a charge for that. And you're like, oh man. So, and it's little things. I mean, it's Wi-Fi costs if you want to stay connected while you're on board. It's drinks because you're only going to get water, juice, and iced tea in most cases. Maybe some, free tea and coffee in the buffet. But like if you drink soda, if you drink alcohol, you're paying extra for all of that. Certain types of entertainment, if you want to do dinner theater or alternative restaurants. If you, Norwegian has some cool virtual reality rooms where you can go play virtual reality video games. That costs extra. Their go-karts cost extra. I mean, a lot of these really cool things that are on these newer ships are going to rack your bill up pretty quickly. So it's important to sit down, make a list, and then figure out how to keep it within your reach.
Exactly. You're right, Ashley.
Even fundamentals will cost you money. I mean, I just posted a link to the comment section, so if anybody wants to read my article, it's designed around how much will that cheap cruise cost you. But the reality is that the cheap cruise is just the starting point. I mean, these factors are still would still apply even if you're on a seaborne ship where you start at 3,000. Well, maybe that's a little bit different. But anyhow, but essentially there's things clear like having the dinner theater, having the go-karts that cost extra. And I think most people, in their heart of hearts, will know that costs extra, even if they hope that it will be included. But there's also things like that fare that might start out at $200 or $300 for a 4-day cruise is going to be an inside cabin on the bottom of the ship. If you want to have a balcony, if you want to be in the front of the ship or the back of the ship, if you want to have an upper floor, it's going to cost you an incremental. It might be, it might think it's only another $10 per day for upper floor, and then $10 per day for a forward cabin. But those numbers add up significantly when you start out with a cruise and only starting at $50 per person. All of a sudden, you added $10 to go to an upper floor and $10 to be in the stern, so you're closer to the buffet. Suddenly, you're now at a $70 a day cruise, and that adds up fast.
Sorry to interrupt you quick, James. I just wanted to say what he's talking about. He's right, but I also want to say that's for the big cruises. When you go to smaller lines like Seaborn or some of these river cruises, it's totally different. There's costs that more things are included. Still, you might have other costs, but when you're doing big ship cruising and you see that small, tiny cost, yeah, exactly what James is saying.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying
and
that. That's why I was like, oh, Seaborn's probably not the best. I was still stuck on that Ed Sheeran Seaborn thing from earlier.
And you'll have fees too, which I'm sure James has, mentioned in the article, that you're not just paying the base fare, you're paying taxes and port fees on top of that too. So if you see a really good deal that looks almost too good to be true, it might be.
And on some of these cruises, when there's a cheap 3-day or 4-day, you might be paying more in the port fees and stuff than at the actual cruise.
Yeah. But that's a great way too to cut down on costs, is to book a shorter sailing. Book an older ship. Usually older ships are more affordable, just because everybody's clamoring to get on the new ones. And there's nothing wrong with the older ones. They're just, they're worn in, they're comfortable, they're still fun, and they're comfy. You'll get what you pay for sure.
And as far as the port fees on that specific one I did, I looked up. It was a real cruise. I went through the whole buying process, except for the actual process of clicking buy. And it started out as a 229 cruise for a 4 day from Los Angeles to Mexico and back. And the port fees on that were $105.64. So that's literally 50% per person of the actual cruise. Which, frankly, okay, so now it's a 324 cruise for 4 days. That's less than $100 a day for having the food and entertainment and all that kind of stuff included. So I think it's still a great deal. So I definitely don't want to knock these 4 day cruises. But it's just a matter of if you're budgeting for it being 2 times 229, so less than $500 for a couple for 4 days. You're going to be sadly mistaken, because I think what I ended up coming out when I upgraded to a couple different rooms and stuff. I mean, we're looking at almost $1,000 for the 4 day, which is still, honestly, that's cheaper than you would be if you were getting a $300 a night hotel room in Los Angeles for a weekend. But it's a exponential difference if you're trying to plan a family budget for it.
Yeah, and there's a variety of deals you can get. Heather can speak more to this for sure, but there are group discounts. There are discounts sometimes for kids. They'll sail free or at a reduced rate.
Exactly.
Or third and fourth passengers in a room. Like if you're two adults sailing together with two children, sometimes they'll let your kids go at no additional cost. And single supplements are another thing to consider. If you are sailing by yourself on most ships, unless you are booking a cabin specifically designed for one person, you're going to pay double the fare, because cabins are designed for two, and they call that a single supplement. So you're not just going to pay for yourself. Your cruise fare is going to double, because you're paying for yourself and for that empty bed in the cabin that you normally would have been sharing with someone else. So my advice there is to either find a friend to go with, or there are services with certain lines that will actually match you to someone else who wants to sail and is looking to share a room to split costs. Or some lines will offer single cabins, or they'll waive the single supplement. They'll run sales where they'll just charge you the one fee.
And I
The
know
one way,
Norwegian does a really good job of marking that out on their cruises, where they actually will have it flagged as single. You won't see it normally, but if you go and search for number of passengers one, that it'll pop up ones that are. I mean, it's still not the same as a single passenger, but it's way cheaper than paying double.
okay, there I am. I thought I was still muted.
And actually, we have a question from Jeff on YouTube asking, do we believe that we will only be able to use ship-sponsored excursions in 2021? And he'd like to save some money by using third party or just walking around.
Jeff, I'm with you there. I'm the same way. I'm one of those people where I like to get into the place I'm going and feel like I'm a local. And if there's a tour company that does local stuff, I'll try to book them, or I'll do it myself. I'm hoping that this will not last very long. I know MSC is having luck with it, but I hope it doesn't continue forever and ever and ever, because there are a lot of companies that rely on people like us who like to explore. They're losing money right now. I mean, they're losing money in general, but even when things start back, if we're not cruising and allowed to do excursions with those people, the economy of that island or that area is going to go down, because they're not going to have the money coming in. So
Yep.
I agree.
I hope for that too. And I guess for me, it's not ideal. I prefer to explore and port on my own as well. I like finding little hole in the wall restaurants or little boutique shops or whatever. But if that is what is needed, at least at first, in order for me to get my butt back on a ship, I'm going to do it, because to me, it's worth it just to be able to go. But I'm with you, Heather. Hopefully it's not a long-term thing.
Exactly. Thank you for that question. I also wanted to say some other ways to look for cheaper cruises is sometimes you can, let's say, oh, I got some money, I got a bonus that came in. Maybe I've got some extra time. Maybe I want to take a cruise. Call up one of these big cruise lines if you live near the cruise port and say, hey, I'm looking for a last minute cruise. Do you have anything for Florida residents, for example, or California residents? I could go, Friday if you had something. And sometimes you will get amazing deals. And if you get on their radar and tell them that you are looking for those cheap cruise deals last minute, they'll give you phone calls about, hey, we've got something that's only $35 a night. Do you want to go? It starts on Thursday. So that's another way to really get in the loop of different things. Or, I mean, that's not necessarily seen, from me, but I can keep you up on those deals too. But that's more if you're going through the cruise ship itself. But I always recommend seeing an agent. And another thing, there was another thing I was going to talk about that James had just mentioned, but now I forgot about it. But I do want to show you guys something that is one of my pet peeves. Now, I'm going to have Ashley talk about tipping and stuff in a little bit on how she likes to tip. But here's one of my biggest pet peeves in life is people not understanding how much to tip in general, not even on a cruise ship, in life. When I was a senior in high school, I was not very good at math, so I was put in this class called college math, which this math class taught you everything you would ever need to know in the real world. It wasn't algebra, it wasn't this, wasn't that. So I'm going to show you for people, and I know there's lots of you out there, and a lot of my friends, I love you dearly, but this is how you figure out how to tip. I'm going to show you. I'm going to share the screen. Ta-da! Okay, everyone see this? Say yes, James. Ashley, you see it? I can't hear anybody. I'm sorry.
Everyone can see
Sorry,
it.
yes.
Okay, because I'm looking at okay, now I can see it on the presentation. So basically what I want to show you is that it's so easy to figure out what 10% is, because people are always like, you're supposed to tip 15%. In today's reality, you should tip more close to 20% or 20%. So here it is, really easy. To figure out 10% of any bill, all you got to do is move the decimal point over one. It's that easy. And then so example, 10% of 50 is $5. Then times it by 2, which makes it 20%, it's $10. There you go. That is the easiest way. But if you want to work on all those, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25%, you can just divide that by half and work it in or whatever. But it's that easy. Sorry, I just had to go on my rant because I know we were talking about tipping.
No, it's helpful.
See,
It's helpful.
I'm disappointed. I was hoping for a Common Core lesson.
That diagram is seriously the easiest way to think about tipping. And anytime I go anywhere, that's all I do is I think about it. I'm like, okay, yep, that's it. And 15% nowadays really is the low. If you're going to a restaurant and tipping, I would say that would be what you would tip somebody if they did not give you great service. You should always still tip. But you can, if it was really that bad, speak to a manager before you leave a zero tip. But I'm going to have Ashley talk a little bit on how to tip on cruise ships in general.
Yay. So we touched a little bit on this last week. I'm a big proponent of tipping because it really does help to supplement the income of the crew members, and they work extremely hard to make sure that your cruise is excellent. Just because you tip does not mean that you agree with the policies, because I know a lot of people don't. I'm one of them. America is one of the few countries that tips, and I think it just makes things super confusing. But that doesn't mean that your dislike of the policy is going to change the policy. And all that will end up happening is that you're going to shortchange the people who really are busting their rear ends to make sure that your vacation is memorable. So what the cruise lines normally do is they will add a daily service fee to your onboard account per person. So if you are sailing with another person, each of you will receive that charge on your bill. The amount generally ranges, I think the going rate now is between like $12 per person per day and like $16 or $17 per person per day, depending on the type of cabin you're in. They will charge you a little more generally if you are staying in a suite or sometimes even a mini suite. And you can adjust that number up or down by going to the front desk, but I don't recommend doing that. If you have an issue with the service you're receiving, just nicely, politely let someone at the front desk know and give them a chance to fix it, because you don't want to let that anger fester and ruin your vacation. Don't let one or two, generally you won't have any because the service is usually fantastic across the board, but don't let one or two minor issues snowball into something that makes it impossible for you to salvage your trip, because that's no fun. Nobody wants that. A lot of people too will adjust that number down or remove it completely, because in their head they're thinking, okay, well, I want to tip my waiter or my room steward in person with cash. It's fine to do that in addition to the service charge, but the reason I would say don't remove the service charges from your onboard bill is because that amount that they charge you daily is split among all of the crew, including ones that you don't interact with daily, but who still provide you services. What I mean by that, it's the people who cook your meals, the people who wash your sheets and your towels, and the people who just generally walk around the ship, wiping down elevator buttons and handrails and making sure things are clean, restocking the toilet paper in the public restrooms near the theater. Just the little things that you might not think about. And it's important to make sure that you're rewarding those people as well. So what I always do is I leave the daily service charges on there. I take some extra cash and I give it to the people who've really made a difference face to face, who I've interacted with. So whether that's bartenders or room stewards or waiters or whoever, that's generally how I like to approach it.
That's great, Ashley, because I will tell you, when we first started cruising, we heard so many different things from people, and we actually did take our money back when we got on the ship for our tips, thinking that, okay, we're just going to disperse it the way we want to. And no, it doesn't, you should not do that. And, I would always add extra money on top of my tip to the person that I was giving it to. But still, no, it takes a while. So we're trying to tell you now, help you first time cruisers or people who have not cruised that much, that yes, this is the way it should be done. I mean, they're not making that much money. They rely on that money.
Yes. And also realize too that there are sometimes when tips are automatically added. So we talked about this last week too, but if you're getting a spa treatment, if you're ordering an alcoholic beverage, and sometimes if you are doing alternative dining, they will add anywhere from 15 to 18% gratuity automatically. So make sure you look closely at your receipt before you add a full additional 20% or whatever, just to make sure that you're not going to end up leaving like a 30 or 40 or 50% tip because you think that it hasn't already been included.
At the same
exactly
time,
right.
though, I always wonder this because I'll get I'll buy a drink for $7.99 or whatever at the comedy club, and it already includes a 15% tip on there. But I kind of feel like some people look at that and say, well, I don't need to tip at all anymore, and some people look at that simply as the cost of doing business. Because if you buy a drink that's $5 pint in a bar at happy hour, to an extent that already has some of the wages built in, whereas the cruise ship, I kind of feel like, aside from the tip, which is really it's a service charge more than a tip, that the person's not actually getting money aside from that little tiny bit.
Yeah, there's also the debate about whether they actually see the money. So just because they're adding 15% or 18% onto your tab, does the person serving you actually see that, or does it go into a big pot? So what I would advise there is when you get on board on the first day or the second day, if you find a bar that you really like and a bartender who knows your order and is being super attentive, if you want to make sure that you're going to get great service for the rest of that sailing, tip them well on the first day and continue to tip them every day after. It doesn't have to be a ton, because it will add up over the course of the sailing, but it'll be enough to reward him or her for the service that's being provided, and also make sure that you continue to enjoy that venue to the fullest extent that you can.
I was going to say that, Ashley, before you said it, is, once you start tipping somebody, they'll start paying attention to you more, and you won't be waiting around. You might get your drink faster. You might get a stronger drink tipping helps.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. It's not necessarily just about getting it faster, but while most places can't give you a free drink because those things are pretty much monitored very, very closely, you might find out that your double becomes a triple. You might find that there's a little bit something extra in there. But honestly, a lot of times you're in a hurry. You want to just kind of grab a quick daiquiri as you're walking between dinner and the comedy club, and not having to be ignored. Time is money, and for that, it's just a good idea, people.
Yeah, I would say as a general rule of thumb, if you're going on a week-long cruise, budget, I'd say an extra $100 to $200 per person just for tipping. Because that will include your auto gratuities and then anything you want to leave on top of that. Another couple quick tips. If you know you're going to need cash on board, get it before you get on the ship because the surcharges for those onboard ATMs are insane. If you're doing something like the Mediterranean where you're going to be going to different countries and you might need different currencies, wait till you get to an ATM in port and get the money there using your ATM card, which most European countries, to be fair, require like a 4-digit PIN. I think most of ours do now these days too, but just so you know that up front, because that's where you're likely to get the best exchange rate is at an ATM versus like an exchange bureau or something. And make sure you've got small bills on you too, because sometimes it can be hard to change out larger bills into smaller ones if you just need a couple bucks to tip the porter who's taking your luggage at port, or the person who delivers your room service order, or the person who just led your shore excursion.
I was going to say that, Ashley, go into that for especially in the Caribbean when you're there, make sure before you leave, get a bunch of small bills like fives, ones, just get a bunch of that so you can, tip the porter. Also, sometimes if you tip the porter well, your package will be your not your package, but your luggage will be in your room faster too. But even when you're doing excursions off the ship, they want to be tipped. I mean, everybody, that's how they live. So make sure you have those small bills on you. And in the Caribbean, at least, you can, most of the time, they'll accept US money because they'll just go and get it exchanged and they're happy because our money's worth a lot more than theirs. So remember to have that on you, the small bills, and have a lot. I mean, what's the worst? You come home with a lot of small bills and you have to exchange it again. I mean, there's no harm on that. But I know we have to wrap up here. It's been a great discussion. We'll have to talk about this again, in the future. But do you guys have anything else to say before we wrap up?
So I have a list of notes. That's what I keep looking at here. And just, I know they're kind of random at this point, but I'll throw them out there because they are tips for keeping your costs down. Hurricane season. Cruise during hurricane season. I think we mentioned this as well previously, but often sailings will be less expensive during hurricane season. So if you're able to be flexible with the itinerary, if you're not going to be completely heartbroken and furious if a particular port gets changed or canceled, that's a great way to save. Another interesting discount that a lot of cruise lines will offer is if you are on a sailing, they will have a future cruise desk that you can go to and look at booking another cruise while you're still on board the current one. And often if you do that, they will give you some sort of discount or perks, or even if it's just like a reduced deposit, because you do have to put a deposit down when you book. Heather,
Really
can tell us more.
No, I was just going to say really quick, if you do that on the cruise ship, make sure to tell them that you already have an agent you're working with, and they'll give you all the information that your agent can register you with that later on and pay. So even you can still get that great discount on the ship and still work with your agent.
Cool. Well, that's all I've got. I don't know. Anyone else have anything?
Well, I think my last tip is simply do the research. I mean, most people have 6 months, maybe a year. In the case of my wonderful parents, they booked a cruise. We thought they booked a cruise for January 2021, and initially when we got on the phone call, we're like, "Hey, Dad, maybe January isn't going to be the right time for." They're both well, my parents. They're not 25-year-olds, and so I wasn't sure that going to Spain or wherever they were planning to go was the right time to go for January for them. They go, oh no, it's for 2022. So, you know, there are people booking
Smart.
cruises out 2 years, a year and a half, and so you have that time. Go on YouTube, go browse the web, talk to your agent about different features, different restaurants, different things, and look for alternatives. For instance, if your big thing is you have to have a steak, and you love steaks, and you love seafood, and you love lobster, and you're like, hey, you know what? The price of the steakhouse on the cruise ship seems like it's pretty high. And frankly, that's not a correct assumption because they're usually a great deal. But let's say for whatever reason you want to have a steak, you can't afford $50 a person, whatever it is. Well, I'm sure Heather could help you and say like, hey, you know what? There's a great place to get some skirt steak in Cancun or Cozumel. There's ways that you can find that, and just be honest with your agent, be honest with yourself, and figure out what you can afford and what's most important. But that being said, Jeff has another question for us, and so I'll kick it over to either to one of you guys. It says, RC Royal Caribbean adds 18% gratuity to our drink package. How much more do you tip, as it's not a per price drink with a drink package? And also, how much extra do you tip the MDR, to attendants, and room steward?
So I'll be honest, I have never had a drink package because I don't drink a lot. I might have, 3 or 4 drinks in a week-long cruise, and that's it. So for me, the package isn't worth it. I would say, a couple bucks maybe. That's just my opinion, James and Heather. You might be able to speak more to that. But if you've already paid an 18% gratuity, I guess it stands to reason that would have been spread among the bartending staff already by the time you get on board. So for each drink you order, maybe just, I don't know, $1 or two, just kind of, especially if you're planning to go back to the same bar over and over, just to kind of show your thanks. And as far as room steward and waiter, I leave my auto gratuities on, and depending on the length of the cruise, like that affects what I leave them in a cash tip at the end. Generally, for me, it's between 5 and 7 per person per day that I leave. That's just my general, but it's up to you. You don't have to tip anything extra. You can, tip 100% extra. I mean, it's whatever you feel. And a lot of it is, for me, beyond the service charge, is based on the actual service. I'm not just throwing them money because I feel obligated to. I'm throwing them money based on their performance, I guess, their receptiveness to my requests. And not that I have that many, but like, hey, I'm sailing alone. There's 2 beds. Can you push it together into one? Like little things like that.
You're right, Ashley. It all depends on the service. And I agree, if you have a drink package where you already have 18% on everything, you've paid a lot. So I would say $1 to $2, depending on the price of your drink, what, the actual prices. And if the person's, doing a really great job, if you get a bad drink, yeah, I may switch to a different person or a different venue, or maybe not, give them that kind of tip. But yes, what Ashley was saying, definitely, if you're dining, like if you're using a specific dining steward, not, why am I saying dining steward? You know what I mean. In the MDR. Waiter. Thank you. I'm clueless right now. So anyway, if you have somebody spot on, tip them well, and whatever you think well is. I mean, I hate to say there's no set limit because you've already paid it, so it's what you feel comfortable with. But if they've gone out of their way, you should tip them extra. Including, I agree with the $5 to $7 per day as well for the cabin steward.
In addition to that, non-monetary recognition goes a long way too. So I'm less familiar with Royal Caribbean, but I know they do have comment cards or some kind of a recognition card. I used to do that sparingly until I realized that, hey, you know what? For every person that I think has done a great job, probably 20 or 30 or 100 other people have thought they've done a good job and didn't recognize them. So even if somebody does something that's like, hey, that was nice, as opposed to, holy cow, they did that, that was super nice, just take the freaking 5 minutes, fill out the card, and send it in because
They get perks and
yeah,
stuff
Yeah,
based on
that's
those
so
too.
yeah.
true. That's a really good point, James.
And money is always good. I mean, I'd be lying if I said money wasn't important. But sometimes it's really nice to have somebody. Okay, so my friend's a cast member at Disney World, and or Disneyland. Sorry. Oh my God, he's going to kick my ass for calling it Disney World instead of Disneyland. But anyhow, uh, occasionally he'll show on Facebook that hey, I got this comment card. Okay, did he get a perk for that? He might probably get a perk for something. Did he get money for that? No, but it made this guy happy. And happy people who are in a service position are going to give better service for everybody. And and there's that. There's money, and a lot of times, as Heather says, there's perks, and these perks might be as basic to you and I as being able to go out off the ship on an excursion, or being able to pick which port they go off. But to the guy who's stuck on a ship working 18-hour days, being able to go off the ship in a port where he's got a Filipino restaurant that he knows, or an Indian restaurant that he knows, or even simply an internet cafe with good, fast, free, high-speed internet, might be in a different parallel than you or I can can relate to. But
So
it'll be a huge thing for him, or her.
yes. When I was on a cruise, I guess it was last year with a friend, and our room steward was saying, "Oh, it looks like a gorgeous day out today. I wish I could go explore the port." And I said, "Oh, have you ever been to, I forget which port it was, but have you ever been here?" And he said, "No, I mean, I've been here on the ship, but I've never been able to actually get off the ship and go explore." And so to me, that kind of broke my heart a little. I was like, my gosh, this guy's probably been to this port 50 times and has never actually seen it. So I said to him, "Is there anything that you would like from port?" I said, we're gonna go out for a bit. Are there any snacks you need? Is there any like, and you know what he said to me? "I would love a magnet." That was what he asked for. So we got him a little like $2 magnet that had the port name on it, and he was tickled. He loved it. He's like, "Thank you so much. This is awesome." So like, don't be afraid to ask them what, don't be like, "How much money do you want?" But, but hey, I'm going to port today. Is there anything you need? And usually they'll say no, no, no. But, if they do ask for something, it's not going to be anything extravagant. And James, to your point about the comment card, I have a fun story about Disney World, the one in Florida, before we go. But I was there with a friend at the Wilderness Lodge just for a drink between, I had like a layover or something, I think, for a flight. So we killed time there. And we all ordered drinks, and the waiter brought them out. And of course, I'm a huge klutz, so mine ended up on the ground because I spilled it. And so he, without even missing a beat, grabbed the glass, cleaned up the mess, and he comes back with a brand new drink, which it was just a glass, like goblet kind of thing. He had stuck a very ill-fitting child's drink cap, like the lid for a child's drink cup, on top with a straw in it as a joke, like, "Hey, in case you spill it again." And we just thought this was the funniest thing. So one of my friends said, "Hey, I think there's a way we should tweet about it, or shout them out. It's like cast shout outs or something, I think it is." So we did this. And within the last, I don't know, I'd say month or so, I think it's reopened now, right? Disney's reopened. One of the same friends who was there with me on that day went back to Wilderness Lodge. Same guy was working, and he remembered my friend and said to him, "Hey, thank you so much for those tweets. I actually got, I don't know if it was like a bonus or whatever, but he got recognition. He knew that we had tweeted that, thanking him, because either his boss mentioned it or he got some sort of commendation." So it really does matter. They notice.
I was going to say, James has done that. He'll take a picture with a staff member, whoever it is, whatever, and then he'll post it to Facebook and Twitter and say, "This person is one of the best people I've ever had." And, the cruise line will comment back and like, "That's great. We're so happy. We've actually contacted so-and-so and told him about how great, this is. And we wanted to let you know." So they do get things back, so you can tweet. But I know we got to go because Ashley has another thing she's got to do. But I want to say next week, join us. We're going to have a special guest on. He is my business director for Virgin Voyages. So yes, and we're going to talk about the private islands that we go to in the Caribbean. Like all the cruise lines have it, from Half Moon Cay to Now, Virgin Voyages has their own Bimini Beach Club, which is on Bimini in the Bahamas, which is amazing. And they're going to stay there till like 11 or midnight and have bonfires and everything else. So get ready for that, because I'm excited, because that's one of my favorite things, is going to an island or beach club for the day. So look forward to that.
See you guys next week.
Yeah, good luck. Bye, everyone. Hope we help you out.